Yes, and there we are again with a new episode of our Gem podcast. And also, I have to say, it's the new season of the Gem podcast. And so I thought it was a great idea to maybe explain you guys why we make this podcast. But I would never do that without my good friend and buddy Ton Greten. And I hope he is there. Ton, are you there?
Of course, I'm there, Sean. So our season 2 will start at the 4th of October. I'm so happy that it will start again. So our first season is finished, 37 or 38 episodes. And now we will continue in our season 2. And it's a blast to be there and to continue there.
Yes,
So
yes, yes. So let's maybe some people have asked us in the time that we were not doing the podcast, hey, why do you guys actually make this podcast? And I think we have a couple of good reasons to make this podcast. At least that's what I like to think. Otherwise, we do this all for nothing if there's no reason behind this. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that before we take one of our favorite topics to have an episode on. So why do we make this podcast on?
we are passionate dance experts who wants to talk about dance, and it's education, information, inspiration to get in 60 minutes plus minus information what you could use for your study, for your lectures, for your workshop. Get inspiration from it, and maybe something you learn also from it, and you discover something new.
Yeah, I definitely hope that we provide a lot of informations and insights of our point of view, our perspective. Remember, the subtitle of the gem method is dance from a different perspective. So we take a couple of subjects that you might know already, but then we look at it from a different perspective, and hopefully we also use subjects that you might not have heard, and then it's new information for you, and then you can find your own perspective on that.
Yes. And our podcast, Sean, we don't cut it and we not edit it. It's how it is. And we have not a big production team around us. So it's quite honest, right from the heart. In the beginning, it could be a bit of messy and it goes in several directions. But at the end, it comes all together to the point in this subject where we're speaking about. And
That,
yes.
that's at least what we think.
Yes.
But it is so true. We don't edit the podcast at all. It is raw, so to speak. We just dive into it. We typically take a subject, and it could be as complicated as symmetry and asymmetry. And then Ton Boat and I do a little bit of study. Well, a little bit, it's actually quite a bit of study before we talk about it. And then we actually bring our both findings and opinions around this topic together and hope that we can come to some sort of a unified idea that you guys can do something with. And that's why it's a little bit messy in the beginning, but it's also very spontaneous. And we hope actually that you look at the form that we use, the format that we use in this thing, because that's actually often how learning goes as well. You explore it first, and then you start to bring it more together and come to some sort of a perspective or conclusion. So we practice what we preach. That's what I want to say with it. I don't hear you, Ton. See, we all have these technical
I'm a
things to
mute,
answer.
but this happens to me all the time, Sean, also last season. So I didn't learn anything about it. But I
Yeah,
don't want to interrupt you when you talk. So this is why I put sometimes my microphone down. And yes, it's necessary actually to listen from beginning to till the end to find the holistic field in it, information in it, because it comes together at the end. But sometimes it's necessary to put the daily information, what is in your daily life, put to dance, but you need some other stories to come to that point.
yeah, yeah. So it's literally how it also works with movement. This is a dance podcast, obviously. It is, and we talk about that. It's actually a little method in a method that Ton and I came up with, where we say, no, you need to explore a movement first, like you explore a thought first, right? and then you make it your own, which is typically called muscle memory, but we call that also muscle memory. But the first part we have exploration, and then we play with it. Then we say, hey, how can we use it? Can we use it in a different context? Can we use it a different way? And we call that we manipulate either our thoughts or our movements. Right. So actually, and that's how our podcast is constantly. We come together, we explore it first, then we try to come some sort of a definition and conclusion, but immediately we take the next step and saying, hey, can we take this a step further? So that principle of exploration, memory, and manipulation comes back all the time. Not only in movement, not only in muscles, but actually today we said to each other, hey, that we should actually do that in everything we do. And therefore, we do that already in our podcast without defining it. Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
how we do that, Tom.
Yes, yes. And why is that podcast so important? First of all, also for ourselves, because we give workshops, seminars, lectures, and we will use our podcast also. We send them before we give a lecture or to a seminar. We use this for to send to the dancers, teachers, choreographers that they can listen before to it before they enter the seminar, and then they get familiar with the information already before, and then in the lecture or in the workshop when we are doing and working with it, then we are more leveling each other in the terminology what we use together, that they are familiar with it. And that's quite interesting and important. But I'm surprised when I 2 weeks ago I had a not a seminar, I had a workshop in Germany. There were 100 dancers there, and from the 100 dancers, I asked who have listened to the podcast, and I sent it a week before, and everybody had also get that podcast, and I was very surprised that there only was one who had listened to it, and the other ones didn't take the effort to listen to it. But if you going to a seminar or workshop, and I would listen to somebody who sent me a podcast, because I put also my time and effort in it to go to that seminar as a participant, and to get already to get prepared. And I was really surprised after I did the workshop. People asked where I can find the podcast. I sent the podcast and more listened to it. So 25% of the 100 listened to it afterwards, and maybe more later. But it was quite interested for them. And I'm quite surprised why they start so slowly to get in it. After they get familiar with it in the workshop, they were really interested in it.
Okay. Yeah, it's an
Mhm.
interesting story. I think it's a little bit human behavior also. And of course, as teachers and people who put a lot of effort in creating these things, we sometimes get a little bit, I don't want to say annoyed, but peeved in English. That's a little bit surprised why people don't do that. This is, of course, a general rule is that if you want to change, prepare to be changed. So there's a good preparation on it. We can never force it, and we will never force you to listen. But there are so many, like you did yesterday in the Dutch episode, it's so much an advantage of having a podcast. You can put it in your car, you can listen to it whenever you want. So that makes it, you can listen in the tempo that you want. You can repeat it if there are a couple of things that you think are interesting. So yeah, obviously an hour podcast, maybe not every point is interesting to you, but after you listened it once, you might say, hey, halfway there was a little interesting point that Todd made. Let me repeat that again. So you can listen it and then take notes. Don't do that while you drive a car, by the way. But so it's a really good study material, and we'll might be a little bit more specific if we do a workshop that we say, hey, listen to episode 5, 10, and 12, because that's the topic that we're going to cover. So we don't expect you to listen to all the 35 or 37 episodes that we have already made, and there will be more. So we might give you a little bit more specific directions of what to listen to as well.
Yes, I would say sometimes I listen also podcasts from other dancers, choreographers, teachers, but there are not so many, and also not educational podcasts because some of them are more entertainment. But I
Yeah.
want to listen to some education because I want also to get educated, and sometimes I find really gems in it, and then I get so much information that I listen not once, twice, but three times or four times, and
Yeah.
then I make notes in it. Then I repeat it. I use it also then in my lessons, and I get new a path in my head to learn also because when I think about it, I'm learning, and then I think again, I'm learning even more, and then it will stuck with me and it stays with me, and that's quite important also for me. And this, I hope, also our podcast, our educational for the education podcast and information to get information, new information. We do also a lot of study to provide it in one podcast, like we did last year on our first season in symmetry, asymmetry, in the proprioception. That's the body awareness of yourself, the awareness, the senses you use for it, and mental coaching we had as a podcast. And that's so interesting, all what we did already, how you can search for music. And we had 38 podcasts, and I can tell you some of them are really interesting, how to be creative. And sometimes I do, because I made that book, The Jam, and I put 50,000 hours of research, and some subjects I did years of study to come to a point, to a conclusion. And that's the beauty of a podcast, that you can put it in a podcast, but also in a listening book, and also in a book where you can read it. It comes together as an ecosystem, what you could use. Mhm.
For your education. Yeah, no, as Don said it, our podcast is primarily educational and informational, and the entertainment is very often in how we interact. It is sometimes a little bit comical, and the technical mistakes we make and stuff like that. So, yeah, you guys will also be a little bit entertained, and I know nowadays everything has to be more fleeting and more entertaining. But yeah, our purpose is definitely to give dancers, dance educators, dance studiers, or just lovers for dance more information and hopefully some education behind the topics that we do. And at first, that's what I wanted to say. I said it also in Dutch. You will see that we try to make intriguing titles, but because I can understand if you use a word like asymmetry or symmetry in a title, the people think, yeah, man, that sounds more like mathematics, and I don't want to do that. This is the only thing that we ask for you. We probably get better in making titles, but the title does not always reveals what we do. So if you listen to it, then you have a better idea what it is, and it has always to do with dance. Does it have to do with a specific dance style, Tom? That's what we talked about too.
No, absolutely not. It's for all kinds of forms and styles of dancing. We mainly come from the ballroom Latin world, but it's really an overview of all dance forms. This is also where we put our studies in, and that's the beauty of it. And also, coming back, that we sometimes be funny, that's because we are two Dutch guys, you
Yeah,
living already a long time in America, in Dallas, I think 18 years now. And
that's right.
yes, and I'm also a Dutchman who are not able to have all the word in English, and this is sometimes also funny. Uh, but this is also fine because Germans and Greek people or Italian or Chinese or Japanese, they can follow then my Dutch English style because it's a little bit thin in the vocabulary, but I'm happy that also American English, Australian, Scottish people can follow it. That's the
Yeah,
beauty
that's
of
right. Yeah, that's right. Coincidental, we are both Dutch. Yeah, that's actually it's Ton and I know each other from the times that I lived in the Netherlands. But we started to work together, and I was already for a long time in the United States. And we came together. We started to be interested in each other's work, and decided to after Ton's book, which I helped to edit, and give input. We actually thought, hey, we should make a podcast together and do other things together, like conferences and what have you not. But yeah, our English excuses on forehand can be a little bit funny when we do that. But you see, there is a part of entertainment in there too. But I hope you listen through all that craziness that we sometimes have. And sometimes we are maybe too direct for some people. That can happen too. Apologies up front, but listen also to the content that we give, because I think, and it's weird to say that about yourself, so I say it about Ton. I think Ton is a brilliant man in dance, and so he has a lot to offer there, and so I'm happy to make this podcast with him. He's on mute again,
this. Yeah,
huh?
our podcast.
Just when he
The
said
name
he's
is.
brilliant.
Mm, No, I want not to interrupt you, Sean. Your brilliant thoughts and words, that's really a pity to interrupt. So this is why I'm not doing this. But the jams, our podcast called Dance Jams. And a jam is a stone and like a diamond or a pearl, what is
Pearl is not a
unique.
stone.
Not a stone? No,
No, no,
not a
it's a pearl.
stone. No,
It's like,
how you call
yeah,
a pearl, Sean?
yeah, pearl is it's yeah. That I don't know how that way you categorize that. Things like an agate and opal. That those are
Smaragd.
those yes, smaragd. Those are gemstones. That's the word.
Gemstones, yes.
Yeah, that's what I
And
was looking for.
every human is something unique, and a unique stone with unique minerals, a unique place where they find a unique color. And actually, this is why we call it gems, but also connect with my name, Greten, equation, movement, or the M you could also use for method. And that's the beauty of it. The equation, we will come later in our later episodes, we come back to it. But in the earlier episodes, you could also hear why we explain the gems. And every human being is something unique in thoughts, in the body, and in uniqueness. That's also the DNA is so unique for each person that you can find that uniqueness. But it's also in the thoughts, in the muscle tension, the tonus we call it in our jam method. And this is the beauty of it. This is why we call it jam, and and we use also the basic color in it, blue, red, and yellow, because the primary color will color the other colors, and you get when you put all the colors in real together, we get black, and this is then the personality. And each personality can grow and can change during the years. And in our season 2, we will take also this as an episode, but also the neurology and neuroplasticity. You can hear my English now, it comes, and Sean can help me with that one.
No, this is too funny.
Yes, yes, too funny.
Yeah,
Sean,
yeah.
help me.
Yeah, yeah, we'll do. We'll definitely do. There's a lot of new information to share that can help us dancers, specifically in the area of neuroplasticity. And in interesting thing, and how do we connect these more medical things, or sometimes other scientific things, like more known from physics, like power and energy. How do we use that in dance? What has that to do with all with dance? Or sometimes can go even little farther than that. Don did a whole thing about time and space, and you would think, hey, is that not Einstein here? Of course, it is coming from Einstein, but you have learned, if you listen to that episode, that it's actually not originated from Mr. Einstein. So sometimes we give you also a little bit of history as a background, just pure for knowledge, right? Like I said, information. But then we always bring it to what has that to do with dance? And no matter what we take. So if we take something like neuroplasticity, it's not for us to sound really smart or intelligent. We actually say, hey, is that connected to dance and movement? If you think about it, what has not to do with dance and movement? Because in the Dutch episode of the first one, we said movement is there's a constant. There is nothing that actually really stands still. That's a non-exist status that we talk about, standing still. So I still hear some people say, when I understand the concept of when they say, for instance, statical balance. What is statical balance? It's dynamical balance is always there, but I understand the concept behind it. So it's not to dismiss that people are wrong and right because I talk about it myself, but that's just a thinking concept. But we can never stand still. It's impossible. Think
Mhm.
about these things. So we also not only educate, hopefully, inform, hopefully, but we also provocate a little bit the current thinking about things. And sometimes that can, specifically for Dutch guys, can come off as we have our own thoughts about it. It's actually, and if you come to a different conclusion, we are super happy with that.
Yeah.
Don't think that you have to take over our conclusions at all. Challenge us on it. Maybe we change our conclusion because of that as well. So that's also part of the podcast. Is
Yeah.
yeah, we provocate, we challenge you in your thoughts, and we challenge ourselves more than anyone, by the way, in our.
Yes, Sean, correct. And don't trust us. Don't believe us. Don't do that. And actually discover it by yourself. But we can give already some information where you think, wow, I didn't never thought about it. We are busy with dance science also, the science of dance, and we try to explore that and to find vocabulary for it. And think about it, that vocabulary, we will do also this in season two, and we did already in season one, but we will bring it also together with corpus callare. And both, that's a new word, and Sean will explain it to you in 1 minute when I'm finished with it, or in a half minute. Think about every word what we speak is connected with movement. Every word, even the stone. And a stone is made by wind, by water, by movement, and maybe by the earth volcanion when they spread around in the area to the earth, and then the wind come, the rain come, and through the years it will change. And this is with the gems the same, and with you also. So, but when we sit here now and speak to you, we came there. Sitting is a movement, and this is why it corpus callare, and Sean will explain you a little bit about it, and then we continue why our podcast is actually there.
Yes, so in talking about it, and we often talk in Dutch to each other, and sometimes the words that we have in Dutch doesn't always translate so really well into English. So we have a nice word. I say it in Dutch, and then I'll translate it first literal. So this is the word woordenschat, and woordenschat would be vocabulary in English. But if I translate that word woordenschat, it actually has two words. One is words, and the other one is treasure. So it's actually literally together. It's a treasure of words that you have, and the larger your treasure of words is, the more abilities you have to express yourself. Doesn't always mean that you have the skills to express yourself, but at least you have the abilities to do that. So if you have a very limited uh, woordenschat or vocabulary, okay, then you have a little bit more limited ways to express yourself. Now, Ton, in his all his wisdom, he said, if you have a treasure of words, you should also have a treasure of movement, a treasure of body, how you express with your body. And he said, and I said, well, there's no English, but there's no Dutch word for it, so we call it now lichaamsgat. Now, if you Dutch, if you are
Move,
uh,
uh, bewegingsgat. Yeah.
bewegingsgat, if you bewegingsgat. And so we don't have a word for that. And so we had to come up with a word, and we did some research, and we thought, hey, where is vocabulary coming from? And it's coming from the Latin word vocabulum. So we thought maybe we can come up with something that is more connected to the body. vocabulary has a little bit more to do with the mind. And playing a little bit with, we came with the word corpuscular. And so that's at least what we're going with right now. But then you have an idea how we kind of work. And then you can play with that. So we have now vocabulary and corpuscular so that we can express when we talk more about the body or the words that we have. And
Yeah.
that brings us automatically to the other topic that these two are more than connected. Actually, they are always one, right? Body and mind are one, but in a modality, we like to sometimes talk about how they are connected. And so we needed a word for that. And to our surprise, there was no word for a bewegingsgat, for a treasure of movement. There is no word that is similar to vocabulary. And so we came up with this word. We'll probably do some more studies. It literally happened an hour before the podcast. That's sometimes how it
Mhm.
goes between Don and me. And but give you a little bit insight how we work and how we value these things and how we try to help that for us to understand dance and movement to a deeper level.
Yes, and we will also speak in our season 2 about our cognitive and our conative. It's also probably maybe two new words for you. And yes, very interesting. And it's a holistic approach also because you get also back to these other words, what we did. And yeah, very nice and interesting to get information about that. And we hope really from the heart of us that we can give you some inspiration to explore the dance world a little bit more in different direction because you can use it in all these different dance forms and different dance styles because it comes at once together because actually what we do is dancing together maybe in different styles but at the end it's one word what stays is dance and dance is actually movement and the movement comes somewhere from this word and yes and this is why we make a podcast about it because it's necessary because there are not so many podcasts over it for dancing there are podcasts over it but there are on several places in different places where you cannot find them and we bring it back to our style to dance and then in different directions of styles and forms. Yes, that's our goal. Actually, go more in the depths, but also more wider in the information, and it's all holistic. Yes, it's not in how you say in a box. We open the boxes and make it more clear that we can speak in the same terminology and that you can understand us when you listen to our podcast. And when we give a workshop or a lecture or a seminar, then it will also understandable more for you. We hope that you can follow us then.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's nice, Tom. It's in English we have such a nice. Sometimes we have very nice expressions in this, right? You can either go a mile wide and an inch deep, or you can choose to go an inch wide and a mile deep, right? And neither one is good or bad. Well, we actually never talk about these things, but yeah, there are things that we would like to discuss first from a general point of view, like a mile wide, and then we don't go so deep. And then there are a couple of things could be like muscle toners. We could go try to go as deep as possible. Why we think that is relevant for dance to know about muscle toners, and that's the constant flow we do. So yeah, there will be episodes that is a little bit more from a general point of view, like this one. This is a very general podcast. We go a little bit left and right, and we give you a little bit of a flavor what we do. And then next podcast, very likely we take only one subject and we try to go as deep as we can at that moment in that. Have that picture in your mind, a mile wide or an inch deep, or do you rather like to go inch wide and then mile deep? And I think you should have a good mix of both of them, but that's only my opinion. And Ton and I try to do both. Sometimes we give very general and information, and then the next one we go more deeper as well.
Mhm. The possibilities are endless,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that's the beauty of our podcast. You can listen it anywhere in your own moment, in your own time. And this is the beauty of it. And I said already several times, yes, I'm finished for now, for me at that moment. But maybe we forgot something to say, Sean, what you
I,
want to say.
I can hardly imagine that we forgot something to say, and except maybe a few examples. Don, you have a whole list of things that we might talk about in the coming season. Just what are a
Oh,
few
yes.
subjects? Yeah. So we
Very
have
good idea.
a couple. Just a little bit of a teaser what we're doing, and then I have a little commercial for to make for you as well. But yeah,
There could be quite words what you never heard of about it. I will not explain them now, but they are all in relationship with dance. It's like the phenomenology, the neuroplasticity, the hands heart, nee, head hands heart, the vitality, instinct, intuition. We will speak about empathy, embodiment, we will speak about it, simulation in dance, singular and composed movements, geometric and organic, knowledge, ability, and skills. That's an episode. And we have 51 episodes. I will not call them all because otherwise you will stop probably, I assume, to listen. But it's 51 we prepared. We cannot do them all 51 in that one season because mainly we will work from our podcast, our season from October till June. And probably we will then post weekly, and it's a talk between what I said already, a passionate experts who are talking just with any sound effects like or come. But Sean can give you a point where you can listen to the sound effect, but we will not use them. Oh
no,
no, that's what would be too funny, Sean.
that would be too that would be too funny. Yeah, we are not the people that have funny sounds like maybe this. But yeah, we don't do things like this. Yeah, we don't do this. So if you're expecting a lot of those kind of things, then we unfortunately have to disappoint you. But we don't do that. I did it, of course, a little bit on purpose right now. But that's all we do. We have a whole list of topics that we do. Of course, the title will be hopefully a little bit more attractive than just the simple words of it. But like I said, it's more about the content than anything else. Weekly, starting in October, as much as we can. And of course, we would love to have your input. And before I forget, it's not always only Ton and me. It's also a guest specialist on certain topics like body mechanics or other things, or how is it when people think that you are limited in the way you can dance because you are in a wheelchair. Are you then limited or are you not limited? Discussions like that. We have that with experts in the field as well, as we did last year. We had experts on music, with experts in how do you dance in a theater or in front of television. How is that different?
Yeah, a
So
painter we had,
painter,
Sean.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
that
an
was really
artist.
interesting.
Yep.
Art.
So yeah, so we have that. So we have a we'll announce that too, of course, way up front when we have that with. And if you think you have a specialism that is interesting to be interviewed by Ton and me, then by all means, don't be shy. Just reach out to us as well. We would love to have you in the show. So I'm looking forward, Ton, to a new season. With that, I am going to say goodbye to you. And before I say goodbye to our listeners, I want to tell them also where they can find us. But hey, I'm excited for our next episode, which will then technically be then episode number 2, but maybe that's the real number 1, because this was just telling you about our podcast. As always, Don, it was a pleasure. I'll see you soon. I'm going to say goodbye to our audience and say bye bye, but wait for a moment because I want to tell you where you can find us with the music. With the
Yeah,
music.
very good, Sean. And they can subscribe. They can also subscribe it. Yes, let's go.
Let's go and turn on the music, and then I'll tell you exactly where you can find us. And the music does not want to work with me today for some reason. Yeah,
So
there's always something. right?
Yes, I can make the music now, Sean.
Yeah, you can.
But
You can.
yes,
Yes, but
but you can find us at Spotify. Ah, look on.
yeah,
We got music, Sean. We got
yeah.
music.
We
So
got music. So this is where you can find us, and there you got some sort of our technical abilities in this podcast. But we can find us at Spotify Dance Dash Jams, or in Apple, same thing, Dance Dash Jams. Of course, we also are on YouTube at tongreten/podcast, or on our own website www.jam.dance/podcast. And we even have a Facebook group that's open to everyone who loves dancing, who wants to know more about dancing, which is, of course, groups, and then it's called the Dance Jams. All right, with
yeah.
that, I say to you goodbye, Ton. See you next time.
Goodbye, Sean. See you next week.
See you next week. Bye
Yes,
bye.
bye bye.